Boss mocked my cheap clothes at work. He didn't know I was the billionaire investor buying him out. I can't believe she wore that to work. My boss Daniel's voice cut through the morning silence like a knife, deliberately loud enough for the entire floor to hear. The clacking of keyboards stopped instantly. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me as nervous laughter rippled through the cubicles. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I forced myself to smile and pretend his words didn't feel like daggers. He had absolutely no idea who he was really talking to. He didn't know that the woman he was mocking in her simple $30 dress was secretly worth more than his entire company. He couldn't imagine that I owned a business empire spanning 12 countries. Today, everything would change forever, and Daniel Cross was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his miserable life. My name is Joanne Mitchell, I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I turned the worst humiliation into the sweetest revenge imaginable. As the snickers died down and people slowly returned to their keyboards, I sat at my desk replaying every single cruel comment Daniel had thrown at me over the past year. Cheap clothes. Not polished enough. Lacks executive presence. Not leadership material. Doesn't understand how business really works. Will never amount to anything significant. Each insult had cut deeper than the last, building a wall of humiliation that I had endured in complete silence. He thought I was powerless, just another struggling employee grateful to have any job at all. He saw my modest clothing from discount retailers and assumed I was poor, desperate, barely scraping by on my meager salary. He looked at my quiet demeanor and mistook it for weakness, for someone who would never fight back no matter how badly she was treated. But Daniel Cross had made the biggest, most catastrophic mistake of his arrogant life. Let me take you back to my first week at Crosstech Industries, exactly 1 year ago. I had walked into that gleaming glass building with genuine excitement, eager to learn the business world from the ground up like my grandfather had always advised. I dressed modestly on purpose, simple blouses from Target, basic skirts from discount stores, shoes that cost less than Daniel probably spent on lunch. I wanted to blend in completely, to observe human nature, to understand how real companies operated when nobody was performing for the boss. That's when Daniel first dismissed me as the poor girl from nowhere. During my orientation, he barely acknowledged my existence when I introduced myself to the management team. When I mentioned that I was interested in learning about corporate strategy and business development, he actually threw his head back and laughed out loud like I had told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. Maybe start with learning how to dress professionally first, he had said, causing the other new hires to snicker nervously. What Daniel didn't know, what absolutely nobody in that building knew, was that I had inherited a massive business empire from my late grandfather just 6 months before I started working at Crosstech. Mitchell Enterprises included luxury hotels across Europe, cutting-edge tech startups in Silicon Valley, real estate developments in Manhattan, private equity funds, and investment portfolios that generated millions in passive income every single month. The lawyers had been very clear about the numbers. At 28, I was now one of the youngest female billionaires in the country. But I never flaunted any of it. My grandfather, Benjamin Mitchell, had built his fortune from absolutely nothing, starting as a janitor and becoming one of the most respected business leaders of his generation. He had taught me that real power comes from understanding people's true character, not from showing off wealth or intimidating others with expensive possessions. Joanne, he had told me during our final conversation before his death, the most dangerous person in any room is the one who looks like they don't belong there. Instead of revealing my wealth immediately, I decided to conduct a year-long experiment in human nature. I wanted to see how people treated someone they perceived as powerless, someone they thought was beneath their notice. Every night, I would return to my luxury Central Park penthouse and analyze Crosstech's financial situation with my team of private investigators and forensic accountants. While Daniel thought I struggled to pay rent on some cramped studio apartment, I was actually discovering that his company was hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. Client retention was plummeting, employee turnover was through the roof, cash flow was terrible, and Daniel had been systematically inflating success metrics while burying mounting losses in creative accounting schemes. But here's what made me smile with anticipation. Crosstech was exactly the type of distressed asset that my investment portfolio specialized in acquiring, restructuring, and turning around for massive profits. The company was perfectly positioned for a hostile takeover, and Daniel was too blinded by his own arrogance to see how vulnerable he really was. Meanwhile, I quietly helped my coworkers in ways that Daniel never noticed or cared about. When Rebecca struggled with the Westfield presentation that could make or break her career, I stayed late helping her practice and refine her delivery. When Tom's brilliant marketing proposal got buried under Daniel's incompetence, I made sure the right people saw it through back channels. When Michelle faced a personal crisis with her mother's illness, I connected her with resources and support networks that could actually help. I wasn't trying to win allies or build some kind of political coalition. I was just being a decent human being, treating people with the respect and kindness that Daniel seemed incapable of showing. But these small acts of genuine care and support would prove absolutely crucial when the time came for my ultimate revenge. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Daniel spent his days tearing people down to build himself up, I was quietly lifting people up without expecting anything in return. One particularly cruel afternoon that I'll never forget, I was in the break room making coffee when I overheard Daniel talking loudly to his assistant Rebecca and 2 department managers. He wasn't even trying to be discreet. In fact, he seemed to enjoy the possibility that I might overhear every word of his vicious character assassination. "She'll never amount to anything meaningful in this industry," he said with absolute certainty, gesturing dismissively toward my general direction. "Look at her, she shops at thrift stores, probably lives in some tiny studio apartment with 3 roommates, takes the bus to work every day. People like that don't have what it takes to succeed in high-level business. They lack the breeding, the connections, the natural instincts for power." His words cut through me like shards of glass, but instead of crying or confronting him directly, I pulled out my phone and started taking detailed notes. I documented every cruel comment, every example of his arrogance, every way he treated the support staff like they were completely invisible. Something cold and calculating was growing inside me, not just anger, but a methodical determination to make him pay for every ounce of cruelty. That evening, I made a phone call that would change everything. I contacted Thomas Ashford, the brilliant attorney who had managed my grandfather's most complex business acquisitions for over 30 years. Thomas had orchestrated hostile takeovers, navigated SEC investigations, and destroyed corrupt executives who thought they were untouchable. "Thomas, I need you to research Crosstech Industries completely. Find every vulnerability, board composition, major shareholders, debt structure, acquisition openings. And Thomas? I also want you to investigate their financial practices thoroughly. If we find what I suspect we'll find, Daniel won't just lose his job, he could lose his freedom." Thomas's voice carried decades of experience and more than a hint of intrigue. "Planning something special, Joanne?" "I'm planning to teach someone a very expensive lesson about treating people with respect and basic human dignity." "Give me 2 weeks, he replied. "If this company is as vulnerable as you suspect, I'll find every weakness we need to exploit." As I hung up the phone, I remembered my grandfather's final words: "Never show your true power until you're ready to use it completely." 2 weeks later, Thomas called with devastating news about Crosstech's financial situation. "Joanne, this is much worse than we initially thought. Daniel's been running a complete house of cards, falsified SEC reports, embezzled company funds, the whole criminal enterprise. But here's our golden opportunity: the board is absolutely desperate. They're facing potential bankruptcy within 18 months without immediate capital injection. What's our strategic move? I've arranged a private lunch meeting with Clara Brennan, the board chairwoman. She thinks she's meeting with Mitchell Investment Group's senior acquisition team about potential partnership opportunities and emergency funding. My shell company was perfectly legitimate and highly profitable, but completely untraceable to my personal identity. What's our opening offer? $45 million for complete acquisition with immediate leadership transition. But Joanne, there's a significant complication we need to address. We're not the only interested party circling this wounded company. A rival firm called Apex Capital is also preparing a bid, and they have deeper pockets and longer industry relationships. Finally, a real challenge that would make this victory truly satisfying. The acquisition process turned out to be far more complex than I'd initially envisioned. For 3 intense weeks, we engaged in a sophisticated bidding war that pushed the final price to $52 million. Apex Capital had more immediate liquidity and decades of established relationships with board members, but my team promised something they couldn't: genuine commitment to employee welfare and ethical business practices. During this entire corporate chess match, Daniel remained completely oblivious to the life-changing negotiations happening directly above his head. He actually bragged to anyone who would listen about the exciting merger possibilities he was personally negotiating, having absolutely no idea that he wasn't even allowed in the room where real decisions were being made. The breakthrough came when Clara discovered Daniel's extensive financial irregularities during routine due diligence. "Ms. Mitchell," she called me personally on a secure line, "we need to meet immediately. There are some deeply concerning discoveries about our current leadership that significantly affect your acquisition proposal." That evening, I sat in my penthouse reviewing the comprehensive evidence Thomas had compiled. Daniel's crimes weren't just corporate mismanagement, they were serious federal offenses that could result in decades in prison. At the monthly all-hands staff meeting, Daniel's cruelty reached a horrifying new peak. Standing at the head of the polished conference table in his custom-tailored $3,000 Italian suit and gleaming Rolex, he decided to make me his primary example of everything wrong with our company culture and professional standards. "Everyone, I want you to take a good, long look at Joanne," he announced to the room of 30 employees, his voice dripping with condescension and barely contained malice. "This is a perfect example of what happens when people don't understand that image and presentation matter tremendously in the business world. Look at that dress. I've seen better fabric at garage sales. Those shoes probably came from a discount bin somewhere." The room erupted in nervous, uncomfortable laughter. Several people actually covered their mouths in shock at his blatant cruelty. I felt my face burn with humiliation so intense it felt like physical pain, but I kept my expression completely neutral and professional. "Do us all a favor, Joanne," he continued with a satisfied smirk. "Next time, dress like someone who actually belongs in a professional environment." Inside, something crystallized into unbreakable diamond-hard determination. The decisive board meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. I had exactly one shot to outmaneuver Apex Capital and secure complete control of Crosstech Industries. But first, I had to survive the most systematically humiliating week of Daniel's psychological warfare yet. Tuesday morning, he cornered me in front of the entire marketing team during their morning briefing. "Joanne, I've been thinking, maybe we should start a company-wide charity drive. You could be our poster child for employees who desperately need professional wardrobe assistance." The marketing team laughed nervously, clearly uncomfortable with his unprofessional behavior. But this time, something completely unexpected happened. Tom from marketing, a quiet guy who rarely spoke up in meetings, stepped forward with surprising courage. "Actually, Daniel, Joanne helped save the Westfield account last month. Maybe we should be focusing on actual results instead of superficial appearances." Daniel's eyes flashed dangerously. "Excuse me?" Are you seriously questioning my management style and business priorities? I'm just saying she's consistently proven her value to this company through her work, Tom replied steadily, refusing to back down. Other voices began joining in around the room. What happened next completely caught Daniel off guard. Michelle from Accounts Payable mentioned how I'd helped her navigate her mother's medical crisis with insurance companies and specialists. Rebecca talked about the crucial presentation assistance I'd provided when she was struggling with the Westfield account. Even quiet employees who rarely spoke in meetings began sharing stories about my genuine kindness and professional support. She actually listens to our ideas, said Karen from Human Resources. She stays late to help without being asked, added Michael from IT. She treats everyone with respect, regardless of their position, said Patricia from Customer Service. Daniel's face turned progressively redder with each testimonial. He clearly couldn't understand how the woman he'd been systematically torturing had somehow earned the genuine respect and loyalty of his staff. His carefully constructed narrative of my supposed incompetence was crumbling in real time. This is completely ridiculous, he exploded. She's nobody special. She's just some random employee who doesn't even dress appropriately. But by Friday, I realized I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. The entire office had quietly chosen their side, and it wasn't his. Friday, 2 p.m. sharp. I sat in the Crosstech conference room wearing my usual modest black dress and discount store shoes, surrounded by board members who had absolutely no idea they were about to hand complete control of their company to the woman their CEO had been tormenting daily for an entire year. Clara called the emergency meeting to order with visible tension in her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two compelling offers for immediate company acquisition. Both firms have presented strong financial cases, but recent discoveries about our current leadership have significantly influenced our final decision. She gestured directly toward me with professional respect. MS. Mitchell from Mitchell Investment Group has demonstrated not only superior financial capability but genuine commitment to employee welfare and ethical business practices that align with our core values. Daniel, who had somehow manipulated his way into attending this crucial meeting, looked completely confused and increasingly agitated. Wait just a minute. Mitchell Investment Group? Who exactly is Ms. Mitchell? I've never heard of this person before. That's when I stood up slowly, walked with complete confidence to the head of the mahogany table, and placed the signed acquisition papers directly in front of his shocked face. Daniel, I said with perfect calm, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room, meet your new boss. The silence was absolutely deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. Daniel's face cycled rapidly through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror as he read the legal documents with shaking hands. This is completely impossible. You're nobody. You can't even afford decent clothes. I smiled and gestured elegantly to the thick stack of contracts. These papers cost me $52 million, Daniel. That's what I paid for your company this afternoon. The board members nodded gravely in unison. Clara spoke with official authority. The acquisition is legally complete. Effective immediately, Crosstech Industries belongs to Mitchell Investment Group, with Ms. Mitchell serving as Chief Executive Officer. Daniel grabbed the papers with trembling hands, scanning the dense legal text frantically like a drowning man looking for a life preserver. This can't be legal. You need extensive board approval, months of due diligence, regulatory approval. We had all of that, I replied evenly. You just weren't important enough to be included in the actual decision-making discussions. His face went from pale white to bright red as the devastating reality crashed down on him like a tsunami. There's more, Daniel, I continued, opening another thick folder with deliberate precision. During our comprehensive due diligence investigation, we discovered some extremely interesting financial irregularities in your management practices. Inflated expense reports, mysterious payments to shell companies, substantial funds transferred to personal accounts, falsified SEC filings. Daniel lunged forward desperately, trying to grab the incriminating papers. Those documents are private and confidential. Actually, I own this company now, which means I have complete legal access to all financial records, email communications, and banking transactions. And what we've discovered will be very interesting to federal investigators and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Clara added with grave seriousness, Daniel, we've already contacted the appropriate federal authorities. There will be a full criminal investigation into potential securities fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The color drained completely from Daniel's face as he realized this wasn't just about losing his job anymore. His entire future, his freedom, his reputation, everything was collapsing in real time. You deliberately set me up, he whispered in shocked disbelief. No, Daniel. You set yourself up through years of criminal behavior. I just documented everything meticulously and legally. Rather than accept his defeat with any semblance of grace or dignity, Daniel made one final, desperate play for survival. He turned to address the staff members who had gathered outside the glass conference room, their faces pressed against the windows to witness this historic confrontation. You think she's going to save you, he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation and rage. She's just another spoiled rich kid playing with inherited money. She'll get bored with this little game and move on to something oming. The entire staff stood up from their desks in perfect unison, creating a wall of solidarity. Not a single person spoke, but their message was crystal clear. They had chosen their side, and it definitely wasn't his. Tom stepped forward first, his voice steady and confident. Daniel, she's the only person in this entire building who actually treats us with genuine respect and basic human dignity. Rebecca added with tears of relief in her eyes. She helped me when you were too busy playing golf to care about our success or failure. She's the leader we've been desperately waiting for. One by one, employees shared powerful stories of my quiet kindness, my willingness to help with projects and personal crises, my genuine interest in their professional development and career growth. Michelle from Accounts Payable stepped forward with surprising courage. She stayed late on her own time to help me understand the new software when you refused to provide proper training. Michael from IT added, she actually listened to my suggestions for system improvements instead of dismissing them immediately. Patricia from Customer Service said, she treated me like a valuable team member, not like some disposable resource. Karen from Human Resources concluded, she showed us what real leadership looks like, leading by example, not through fear and intimidation. Daniel looked around desperately, seeing faces that were no longer afraid of his retaliation, no longer impressed by his expensive suits or corporate bullying tactics. The kingdom of fear and psychological manipulation that he'd spent years building was crumbling before his eyes, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. You're all going to deeply regret this decision, he snarled, but his threat sounded hollow and pathetic. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear my next words. The only regret here is that it took me this long to stop your systematic reign of terror and abuse. Clara stood up with official termination papers already prepared. Daniel, these are your immediate termination documents. Security will escort you out of the building within the next 30 minutes. You have that long to clean out your office and remove your personal belongings. You can't fire me. Daniel screamed, completely losing all composure. I have ironclad contracts. I have legal rights. This is completely illegal. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a comprehensive legal brief. Actually, your employment contract contains a detailed morality clause that specifically covers financial misconduct and creating a hostile work environment. Both conditions have been thoroughly documented and legally satisfied. Your termination is not only completely legal, it's mandatory under company policy. That's when something even more unexpected happened. The conference room door opened, and 2 FBI agents in dark suits walked in with federal warrants and handcuffs. Daniel Cross, the lead agent, asked professionally. "You're under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." Daniel's legs actually gave out, and he collapsed into his chair as the full magnitude of his situation finally hit him. This wasn't just job loss, this was complete life destruction. As the FBI agents read Daniel his rights and placed him in handcuffs, he made one last desperate attempt to maintain some shred of dignity. "This is a setup. This is corporate conspiracy. I'm being framed by jealous competitors." But the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Bank records, email communications, falsified documents, witness testimonies, everything painted a clear picture of systematic criminal behavior spanning multiple years. The lead FBI agent looked at him with professional disdain. "Mr. Cross, we have 3 years of evidence documenting your criminal activities. Your own digital communications and financial records provided most of the proof we needed." As they escorted him through the office in handcuffs, Daniel caught my eye one final time. I saw recognition there, and something else, the dawning understanding that his own arrogance and cruelty had led directly to this moment of complete destruction. "You planned this entire thing from the beginning, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I looked him directly in the eyes. "I learned from the best teacher of all, Daniel. You showed me exactly the kind of leader I never wanted to become, and exactly the kind of justice that bullies like you deserve." 3 weeks after Daniel's arrest, I called an all-hands meeting to address the elephant in the room and set clear expectations for our company's future direction. The entire staff gathered in the main conference room, still somewhat shell-shocked by the dramatic events but cautiously optimistic about what came next. "I know everyone has questions about recent events and what they mean for your jobs and careers," I began, standing at the same spot where Daniel had humiliated me so many times. "Let me be absolutely clear, every single person in this room who wants to stay and contribute to our success has a secure future here." The relief on their faces was palpable. Under Daniel's leadership, people had lived in constant fear of arbitrary layoffs and budget cuts. "But more importantly," I continued, "we're going to fundamentally change how this company operates. No more fear-based management. No more taking credit for other people's work. No more treating employees like disposable resources. We're going to build something better together." Rebecca raised her hand tentatively. "What about the Westfield account and our other major clients? Are they staying with us?" I smiled. "Not only are they staying, but we've already secured 3 new major contracts that Daniel had given up on." Turns out, when you actually listen to clients and deliver on promises, business tends to grow. Over the following months, the transformation of cross-tech industries exceeded even my most optimistic projections. Employee satisfaction scores skyrocketed to industry-leading levels as people rediscovered their passion for work in an environment free from fear and psychological abuse. We implemented innovative profit-sharing programs, comprehensive professional development opportunities, and flexible work arrangements that actually supported work-life balance. Productivity increased dramatically when people felt valued and respected rather than constantly threatened. Client retention improved by 78% as our newly motivated team delivered exceptional service and innovative solutions. Word spread quickly through the industry that CrossTech was under new leadership that actually cared about results and relationships rather than ego and intimidation. Our stock price more than tripled within 6 months as investors recognized the fundamental cultural and operational improvements. We expanded into 2 new markets with cutting-edge products that our newly empowered teams had been developing but Daniel had refused to support. Most importantly, we hired 15 exceptional new employees who brought fresh energy, innovative ideas, and diverse perspectives that enriched our entire organization. The company that Daniel claimed I would destroy was now more successful, profitable, and respected than it had ever been in its entire history. The criminal trial of Daniel Cross became front-page news in the business world. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of his systematic fraud, including falsified financial reports, embezzled funds totaling over $2 million, and illegal insider trading schemes. I testified as a key witness, describing the hostile work environment he'd created and the financial irregularities I'd discovered during the acquisition process. The jury looked horrified as they heard story after story of his psychological abuse and criminal behavior. Daniel's expensive legal team tried desperately to paint him as a victim of corporate conspiracy, but the evidence was simply too overwhelming. Bank records, email communications, witness testimonies, and forensic accounting reports all told the same damning story. The judge's final statement was particularly satisfying. "Mr. Cross, you have demonstrated a pattern of criminal behavior that shows complete disregard for the law, your employees, and your shareholders. Your actions have caused immeasurable harm to countless individuals who trusted you with their livelihoods and investments." Daniel Cross was sentenced to 36 months in federal prison, plus substantial financial restitution and permanent prohibition from serving as an officer or director of any public company. 6 months after the trial, I sat in the completely renovated CEO office, wearing the exact same simple black dress that Daniel had mocked so cruelly on that first day. But absolutely everything else had changed beyond recognition. The office itself reflected our new company culture, open, collaborative, focused on people rather than power displays. Gone were Daniel's intimidating leather furniture and ego wall of awards. Instead, we had comfortable seating areas for team meetings and walls covered with employee achievements and client success stories. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former CEO Daniel Cross reports to federal prison to begin 36-month sentence. Justice had been served completely and publicly. I thought about calling him to gloat about his imprisonment, but decided against it. The best revenge wasn't rubbing his face in his spectacular downfall. It was building something infinitely better than anything his small, cruel mind could have ever imagined or accomplished. As I prepared to leave for the day, Rebecca knocked on my door with genuine warmth and gratitude in her eyes. "Ms. Mitchell? The entire staff wanted me to give you this." She handed me a beautifully crafted card signed by every single employee in the company. "Thank you for showing us what real leadership, dignity, respect, and justice look like." Today, 2 years after that humiliating morning when Daniel mocked my cheap clothes, Crosstech Industries is an entirely different company. We've grown from 50 employees to over 150. Our revenue has increased by 400%, and we're consistently ranked as one of the best places to work in our industry. But the real change isn't in the numbers, it's in the culture we've built together. Employees feel genuinely valued, innovative ideas are welcomed regardless of hierarchy, and success comes from collaboration rather than fear. We've created an environment where the next Joanne Mitchell won't need to hide her talents or endure abuse to prove her worth. Sometimes former colleagues from other companies ask me if I ever regret the way things happened. They wonder if I could have handled the situation differently, maybe found a way to work with Daniel or simply moved to another company. The truth is, I don't regret a single moment. Daniel's decision to systematically humiliate and abuse me was the catalyst that revealed his true character and ultimately led to justice for everyone he'd harmed over the years. I still wear simple clothes to work sometimes. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. They remind me that real power doesn't come from expensive suits or intimidation tactics. It comes from treating people with respect, building others up instead of tearing them down, and never forgetting where you came from. As I look out at our thriving company, I remember Daniel's cruel words. People like that don't have what it takes to succeed. He was wrong about everything, but especially about that. People who lead with kindness, integrity, and genuine care for others were exactly what it takes to build something lasting and meaningful. What an incredible journey this has been. This story proves that karma always comes full circle, and bullies eventually get exactly what they deserve. Have you ever fantasized about getting the ultimate revenge on a boss who completely underestimated you? Share your workplace horror stories in the comments below. I read every single one and they inspire my next videos. If you loved watching Daniel get his perfect comeuppance, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales of workplace justice and sweet revenge. Trust me, the next story will blow your mind even more than this one did.